What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video, and this one is a special one to me. This is my favorite video that I do every single year. I started it after the 2018 New York Jets season. That's how long I've been doing this, and every single year I've done a long form video of fixing the New York Jets. We're talking coaching changes, draft, free agency, and so much more. I am excited to get into it for the 6th year in a row. But first, a word from our sponsors. Thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring. What's up, guys? Matt O'Leary back with some more Underdog Fantasy plays. It is the wild card weekend. I got 3 plays. Make sure to sign up using my link down below to get a 100% match deposit bonus. Going with higher on Matthew Stafford's passing yards this week. Think they get a shootout in Detroit. CJ Stroud higher than 3.5 sacks taken. I think the Cleveland defense eats alive the offensive line of the Texans. And finally, higher on 100.5 receiving yards for CeeDee Lamb in the game against Dallas, or in the game for Dallas against the Green Bay Packers. You could ride me, you could fade me, do your own plays at Underdog Fantasy, but make sure you do it signing up with my link over down below in the description. The New York Jets, as of right now, are not making any coaching changes, but I am fixing the Jets, right? So I will not do anything unrealistic and say, fire the coach, just fire the coach, the GM, and all that stuff. We're going to do a search. No, and I've made my peace again with some guys returning, Nathaniel Hackett being one of those guys, but I'm going to return, or change rather, 3 positional coaches that desperately need it. And that is the offensive line coach, the quarterback coach, and the running back coach. Those are my only 3 changes to the staff. Nathaniel Hackett, you can bring everybody else back. Reason why offensive line coach needs to change, well, have you heard the stuff with Keith Carter? I'm going to bring in Mike Munchak on the offensive line. He was with the Titans from 1997 through 2010. He was their head coach from 2011 to 2013. He was the Steelers offensive line coach from 2014 to 2018, and the Broncos offensive line coach from 2019 through 2021. Now, here's how his offensive lines ranked from 2018, working their way back to 2014 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were in the run 15th, 7th, 3rd, 8, 6, top half of the league every year. In the pass, 4, 1, 4, 8, 14. So they were a top half of the league unit every single year he was there. As for just overall rankings with the Broncos from 2019 through 2021, 12th, 25th, 19th. And there were some injuries that he dealt with, and 25th is obviously mediocre, but a top 12 offensive line at one point, a top 20 offensive line in his last year, that would be a major improvement. And guess what? He's a well-respected coach, unlike Keith Carter. Okay, quarterback coach, Luke Getsy. He was the former offensive coordinator for the, I almost said the Broncos, the Chicago Bears over the last couple of years. But more importantly, he was Rodgers' quarterback coach in 2020 and 2021, the 2 years that he won back-to-back MVPs. Rob Calabrese can go back to coaching college ball on Staten Island at Wagner, and Luke Getsy can be the quarterback coach. And finally, Deuce Staley at running back coach. He spent this past year with the Carolina Panthers on their staff as the running back coach, but before that, from 2013 to 2020, he was the running back coach of the Philadelphia Eagles and the Lions running back coach from 21 to 22. So he spent a lot of time developing running backs in Philly. Mainly LaShawn McCoy, who had some of his best years under him. Now, granted, LaShawn McCoy was there before 2013, but some of his best seasons were with Deuce Staley as the running back coach. Okay, let's get into the good stuff. Freeing up some cap space is important for the New York Jets. This is the number we are starting out with. Now let's get to the cuts. Laken Tomlinson, see ya. Laken Tomlinson is an obvious cut candidate. Actually, I shouldn't say an obvious cut candidate. He just feels like someone that you would like to see the New York Jets move on from and get an upgrade to. It frees up some money. I think it's worthwhile to do it. I think he's been an underwhelming Jet. CJ Uzomah had 1 more year left on his deal. Injuries, wasn't very effective this year. Jeremy Ruckert is more than capable of being tight end too, as we saw as the year went on. CJ Uzomah frees up money. And last but certainly not least, the final cut is Michael Clemens. He doesn't really have a role other than special teams on this team. He's kind of, especially since he put on the weight, He's kind of too big to play edge, and he's kind of too small to play on the interior. He had a tough season where he was penalized in a few big spots. I just think the Jets could potentially move on there and just free up a little bit of extra cash. Now, restructures are something that are very, very important. The Jets can restructure 3 contracts. I think there are 3 obvious candidates to free up some money. The first is CJ Mosley. Is he a cut candidate? Yes, but I also think that he is someone who is such an important piece to this defense. And I think even though, yes, Quincy Williams has surpassed him in ability at this point, CJ Mosley is such a leader, and his football IQ is still way, way up there, which, yes, Mosley may have lost a step, but he's still a quality player because of how smart of a football player he is. I would restructure him to keep him here to pair with Quincy Williams. John Franklin Myers, just a criminally underrated New York Jet all these years later, still underrated. I would like to restructure him, not cut him. And finally, Allen Lazard is a restructure as well. Very tough first year. Save some money this year and hope that Aaron Rodgers is able to get something out of Allen Lazard. Those are my 3 restructure candidates to get some more cash. And then I'm going to extend 2 people before we get to free agency. Now, these are not guys who are on expiring deals, because that is going to be retaining in free agency. These are guys who have years under contract left, but you could actually extend them. And first we'll do DJ Reed, because if you extend him, you could actually free up an additional $7.5 million in cap space. And I'm going to give him a 3-year, $42 million contract. That is an AAV of $14 million a year. Gets a nice little bump up. That's essentially the same AAV as guys like Darius Slay. He's not going to be, at least I don't think, in the $20 million range. He's a very, very, very damn good player for this New York Jets team. And at 28 years old, he already kind of cashed in once. This would be a nice second cash in for him, getting 2 new deals before the age of 30. That is exactly what you want as a corner, because unfortunately, like running backs, their prime don't last very, very long. So DJ Reed gets an extension. And the New York Jets, this one doesn't change the money, but I still think it's worthwhile to extend him. Michael Carter. Hey-oh, how about that? Michael Carter, the slot corner, 3 years, $30 million. Slot corner is still a very undervalued position, so it won't be nearly as much as a guy like DJ Reed, who could get 14, maybe $15 million on the in the free agency or on a new contract. I think 3 for 30 would put him as one of the highest paid slot corners in the NFL, and he's absolutely deserving of it. Okay, let's do 2 trades before we get into free agency here. The first is trading away Zach Wilson. I'm sorry, Zach Truthers. The Zach Wilson era with New York, I think it's over. I have him getting traded to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 5th-round pick 173. The New York Jets get in return for Zach Wilson. He gets a fresh start, can sit behind Patrick Mahomes. Maybe they flip him for capital if he has a good preseason and training camp. And the Jets just, I think, would be better off moving on. And it didn't work out for 3 years, unfortunately. I wanted Zach Wilson to work out. I wanted the Jets to draft him. It just hasn't worked. As for a trade acquiring someone, when there's smoke, there's fire. I think the New York Jets acquired Davante Adams via trade. I don't think it is going to be nearly as costly as many are assuming that it is. I would say the 2024 3rd-round pick this year and a conditional 2025 pick starting as a 3rd can get bumped up to a 2nd depending on some sort of incentive. If you want to do play X amount of games, go over whatever yardage total, Jets appear in an AFC championship game, Jets go to a Super Bowl, whatever the condition you want to put on it, fine. But at 2025, that could be as high as a number 2 if things break right for the New York Jets. He has a $16.9 million cap hit for a team that would be acquiring him. And while I would love to see the Jets potentially add a Mike Evans or a T. Higgins, their cap hit might end up actually being higher than what Davante's would be for the New York Jets this year. They could rework his contract similarly to what they did with Aaron Rodgers last year, and he's still someone who put up 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns this past year with Jimmy G and Aiden O'Connell throwing him passes. Okay, let's go to free agency. So, free agency, I'll do re-signs first, and then we will get into external free agents, starting with the trio of special teams guys. Justin Hardy comes back on a 2-year deal, $4 million total. Thomas Morstead, 1 year deal, $1.75 million. Greg Zerloin, 1 year, $2.6 million. By the way, if I'm going here, I will indicate if the cap hit is something different than what the AAV would be, and it's going to show on the screen anyway. But by the way, in case you don't know, the cap hit does not necessarily have to be the AAV. You can structure things so that it is a lower number in year one and progress over time, or even if you wanted to do a higher number and it gets lower over time, you could do it that way. But I will let you know cap hits and stuff like that if they differ. Quentin Jefferson is someone that I would like to see the Jets bring back. 1 year, $3.5 million. I thought he was an excellent Jet this year. They missed him when he went down. And someone else that I think the Jets should bring back for depth is Solomon Thomas. So I'll go 2 years, $5 million, $2.5 million AAV there, and that's his cap hit on the year. Bring him back for depth on the interior. Let's get to those safeties. Chuck Clark never took a snap for the New York Jets this year before injuring his ACL. I think he's retained on a relatively cheap deal, 1 year, $3 million, a flyer deal that could turn out good for the New York Jets. I am a huge Chuck Clark fan. I was really excited for him to join the New York Jets. I think he's a much more consistent tackler than a Jordan Whitehead. So I'm comfortable with letting, Whitehead walk in free agency. You bring back Chuck Clark and you also bring back Ashton Davis. You essentially have those two guys as your strong safety type of players. Davis gets a 2 year deal, $6 million, $3 million cap hit there. Connor McGovern, I am bringing back for depth. They did it last year. He didn't make much money. I don't think he's getting an increase in pay. 1 year, $1.5 million. And finally, the big one. What do the Jets do with Bryce Huff? It is my decision, right? This is what I would do for the New York Jets. I would extend or sign Bryce Huff to a contract extension. 3 years, $50 million, $16.7 million AAV. Structuring it so it's a $10 million cap hit in year one. Goes up after that as the cap continues to go up. But Bryce Huff has been one of the most efficient pass rushers in the NFL over the last 3 years. He is the best edge rusher the New York Jets have had since John Abraham. I understand you used a first-round pick on Will McDonald. I know you have Jermaine Johnson here in JFM. JFM could kick inside. They like to rotate guys. Bryce Huff is someone that you found as an undrafted free agent, and you developed into an elite-level pass rusher. Letting him walk and getting paid $15 to $17 million a year somewhere else, and him to put up double-digit sack seasons year over year through his mid-20s is not a good way to do business. You could absolutely retain Bryce Huff and add to the offensive side of the ball. You can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Let's get to external free agency. I am going to keep it relatively on the quiet side. I have 3 guys that I am signing and external free agency. The first is Ezra Cleveland, someone I would have liked the Jets to potentially trade for. 3 year, $28.5 million cap hit, structuring to a $3.5 million cap hit in year one. He's 25 years old, steady run blocker. He is someone who was, I thought, spectacular in Minnesota before he got moved. Really steady, again, strong run blocker. In Jacksonville, he hasn't been as good in Jacksonville, but they've also bumped him around on the offensive line. They had him playing a little bit of left tackle in a pinch. I wouldn't recommend doing that. And the whole unit on Jacksonville is an offensive line that really, really struggles. So he's, at 25, he's entering the prime of his career. I think he is someone who would be a relatively cheaper option as opposed to paying a big time money contract. And I'm going to have another add on the offensive line that's also kind of in that same tier, but I would feel comfortable doing that at his age and at that price point. The second guy is also an offensive lineman, and that's Graham Glasgow, right guard of the Detroit Lions. He is 31 years old, so he gets a 2 year, $14 million deal, $5 million in year one. Reliable vet, can play on either side of the line. He's played right guard this year and has been stellar at right guard. He could also play center, which he did in Detroit. He is just a monster in the run game. I think he would be an excellent addition to the interior of the offensive line for the New York Jets, and they need to get some new starters in here. As I mentioned, they probably need, you're cut Laken Tomlinson, so they're going to need 3 starters. Hint, going to have to try to find another one in the NFL draft. And the last guy that I'm bringing in is a reliable backup quarterback. Ryan Tannehill 2-year, $10 million contract, $2.5 million in year one. He is 35 years old. It's a structure that's very similar, by the way, contract-wise, to what Andy Dalton got this past year, signing in Carolina. He has started a ton of games in his career for Miami and Tennessee. We'll have Todd Downing relationship, which he had in Tennessee. Now, I'm not saying he's 2019 or 2020 Ryan Tannehill anymore, but he is someone that I'd feel comfortable with if, God forbid, Aaron Rodgers had to miss a couple, we'll say 2 games, a couple of games, and do you have to go back to insert whichever quarterback the Jets started over the last 2 years here, or would you rather go to a Ryan Tannehill for a game or 2 if you needed to? And supposedly the Jets were really high on him this past offseason. He didn't become available, so they obviously pivoted and went Aaron Rodgers, a bigger swing and a better swing, but the Jets have showed interest in Ryan Tannehill in the past, and I think it's one that makes sense. Okay, to the NFL draft we go. Round 1, pick 10, Talisi Fuaga, offensive tackle, Oregon State. I don't think Alter Fashanu are there in this one, but Fuaga seems like the most likely selection. His play strength, I think, is absolutely incredible. Now, he might have to start his career at right tackle, which some would say, well, you're going to spend a top 10 pick on a right tackle. Well, someone this good, I will. He's an unreal run blocker. Don't overthink it. To me, this gives Tristan Wirfs vibes. Jets probably should have made that selection at pick 11 in 2020, but instead we know what happens here. Talise Fuaga is a New York Jet. Round 4, because round 3 pick was traded in the Devontae Adams deal. Round 4, pick 111, Zach Zinter, offensive guard, Michigan. He's coming off an injury, got hurt in the middle of this season, played a big chunk of it though, 6'6", 322. He's big, he's nasty. He's someone who, even though as a mid-round pick, I think he could be a starter in this league sooner rather than later and eventually take over for one of those 2 veteran guards that I signed to relatively cheap deals. Back on the clock with their second round 4 selection, Michael Pratt out of Tulane. Developmental quarterback, day 3 swing. He's someone who I think goes in the 3rd or 4th round. He's a really good athlete. He can run. He needs some grooming. He is not a perfect prospect. If he was, he'd be going in the 1st round or the 2nd round, right? But he is someone with some upside that I'd be willing to take a swing on. Michael Pratt, Cam Ward, those are 2 mid to later round quarterbacks that I would be interested in. Maybe a best case scenario, he sits and could be, someone who develops into a starter. Most likely scenario, have someone who could be a backup quarterback for relatively cheap for 4 years. I am interested in Pratt and developing him. Round 5, the selection that you got in the Zach Wilson trade. I'm going Keith Randolph Jr., interior defensive line, Illinois. Depth on the interior is a sneaky need for this team. And they have a lot of veterans that are plugged in there on the interior. Outside of Quinnen Williams, they could use somebody. And I think he would fill that void pretty nicely. Round 6, pick 186, Mayan Williams, running back out of Ohio State. He is a bowling ball short yardage back. I think he would complement Breece Hall and Izzy Abanikanda. Those are 2 guys who have significant speed, and they need someone who could be good in short yardage situations. They really haven't had that guy, and Williams, with how he's built, I think would be a perfect fit for that role. 2 picks in round 7. The first is Dominic Lovett, wide receiver out of Georgia. Gadget player. This is what he is. He's smaller in stature, but he's a playmaker, a chess piece that a good offensive staff finds ways to get on the field and get him the ball. Is he someone who's going to be a number 1 wide receiver for you? Probably not. I mean, a round 7 selection, probably not. But he's a little bit of a gadgety player. He's a fun player, and the Jets need help and explosiveness on the offensive side of the ball. And last but not least, round 7, pick 253, Aubrey Burks out of West Virginia, split safety, add more depth to that room because I don't know if Chuck Clark's a long-term answer. And it doesn't hurt to continue to add depth and throw, that's by the end you're throwing darts. And I'm going to throw a dart at safety. Okay, so let's take a look at the depth chart. We'll go offense first, quarterback, Rodgers, Tannehill, and Pratt. Running back room is Hall, Abanikanda, and rookie running back Williams. Wide receiver rooms, we got the Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Xavier Gibson, Alan Lazard, Jason Brownlee, and Lovett are your 6 wide receivers. 3 tight ends, Conklin, Ruckert, and Kuntz. Yes, I'm elevating Zach Kuntz. I think maybe get him a little bit of a look. Ruckert's your blocking tight end of the bunch. All right, offensive line from left to right, Elijah Vera Tucker. He moves out to tackle, and he plays on the left side. I think the Jets They could play him at guard. I understand some people are concerned because he got hurt at tackle. I think that's just coincidence both times. It's not like he hurt the same thing. He had an Achilles injury, which could happen literally at any point, at anywhere. And he had a tricep injury. So it's not like he hurt his knee both times or, had the same type of injury. They're both fluky kind of things. And I'm going to put Vera Tucker on the left side. It could be Fuaga, but I'm going to put Fuaga over on the right side, which means at left guard, Cleveland, center, Tippmann, right guard, Glasgow, and Fuaga at right tackle, with your depth being Mitchell, Schweitzer, McGovern, Zinter, and Warren. Pretty good depth there, something that they've needed on the line for the last few years. On the defensive line, you got Huff, Williams, Franklin Myers, Johnson, McDonald, Thomas, Jefferson, and Randolph Jr. there. Linebacker rooms, you got Williams and Mosley as your starters, Sherwood, Surratt, and Barnes beyond that. You also have on the cornerback room, Gardner, Reed, Carter II, Hardy, Bernard Converse, and Brandon Eccles. Strong safety, Chuck Clark. Free safety, Tony Adams. You have Davis and Burks for depth, with your punter, Morstead; kicker, Greg Zerloin; Thomas Hennessy; your long snapper. Your returners are Gibson and Abanikanda. That is 52 names, by the way. I believe, 51 names, by the way. Sorry, couldn't count. So there is space to add UDFAs. You could add 2 more guys to this roster. Yes, it's not a complete 53, but yeah, that's a pretty damn good start, I would say, for fixing the New York Jets. So tell me how I did down below in the comments. I really appreciate it. As I said, this is my favorite video of the year. If you watched it all the way through, if you could just show your support by liking, commenting, share it with a friend. It's all free ways. Subscribe if you're not already. It's all free ways to help support me and help support this channel. I love what I get to do every single day. It's truly a blessing, and I can't believe that I'm doing this now for the 6th year in a row. Hopefully I'm not fixing the Jets next year. Let me know your thoughts. I'm Matt O'Leary. I'll catch you next time.